Welcome to the weekly Wisdom for Parents parenting lesson. We are excited to be with you. My name is Melanie Soloway.
And I'm Deanna Gelly-Maud.
And we are excited because this week we're going on a journey. And Deanna and I were talking about what it's like to be on this parenting journey, right? Especially when we are about to have our baby and bring these little beings into the world, and we pack these suitcases with all of these like great expectations that we have and all our imaginings of what it's going to be like. And it's like we're packing for a summer trip in the south of France. And, we've got our bathing suit and our robe to go down to the beach, and we've got our suitcases all packed for this exotic summer vacation. And then this baby or these babies land in our lives, and we find ourselves in the Antarctica.
Yeah, and it was cold. I mean, you and I both know that we had two babies, so that's a whole nother situation.
Right. So two babies, meaning that Deanna and I both have twins. My twins are now 21, and
My
Deanna's,
twins are 17, boy, girl.
yeah. And then I also have an 18-year-old. And when the parenting journey is not what we expect, right? When it's not what we had wished or hoped for, or fantasized that it was going to be like, what do we do? Like, how do we respond to that? How do we respond when we show up and we're like in the Antarctica and it's cold and we don't have our jackets and we haven't checked into the igloos and we don't know where we're supposed to stay? And how do we pivot as parents? Like, what really helps? And part of what we were talking about is really looking at how to pivot our mindsets and really, really shifting the word that I'm looking for, not just our realities, but shifting our expectations to match what is versus what we wished it would have been. And how do we do that? Part of it is recognizing what's actually happening and understanding that when we're parenting these beings that come into the world to us, like, it's our belief that they choose us.
Right? Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because as you're saying that, I think about the fantasies that we put on and project onto situations in our lives. Oh, if I did, when I just get married. Oh, when I just get that family or that job. We put all these fantasies uh, and project them into our future, and we have it already run out how it's going to go. And I think we all can raise our hand to it. It doesn't go like that. It goes how it goes, but it's just like your marriage. You think, oh, I just have to get married. And once you're married, everything's just going to glide along. But it's like that's when the real work begins, just like when you have a child. That's when the real work begins. And not just learning about how to parent your child as much as it is how to reparent yourself and all that that comes up as you're parenting a child, right? And all that comes up with your partner, because not only is it just you now parenting this child, now you have this partner who's also parenting child or children. And we have to get really good at knowing ourselves and seeing what we need and what's going on for us. And I had this experience just the other night, and I was in the back seat of a car, and I had this feeling of the driver was driving, how the driver was driving, but in the back seat, to me it felt like it was jerking me around, and it was starting to trigger this old memory of an accident I had. And I could have in that moment say, oh, it's the driver, oh, he's a terrible driver, and all of this. But then I realized I was just present to, like, I'm in the same seat that I was in that accident. I'm in the same neighborhood as that accident. And so I started having the connection to, like, oh, that's still in there as a trauma. And I think as parents, we have to look at what comes up for us and work through not only our own traumas, but so we can get present and see what the best course action is for our children.
Yeah, that is such a important thing to do, right, Deanna? Because in the situation that you describe, you actually um remembered what the trigger was. You actually had a very definite anchor that you could connect it back to and make that realization that you were being triggered by the driving that was happening and the recognition that you were in the same seat that where you had sat so many years before when that accident happened. And that lives in your body. And so when our kids are, something happens with our kids, and the thing that I'm thinking about is our kids rude to us, right? Or our kid talks back to us, or our kid's crying, or our kid starts yelling, or our kid's asking for something to, whatever the situation is that we get triggered by, if we're not even aware of what that is, it doesn't make the experience in our body go away. We just don't know what we're anchoring it to. And so rather than even responding to the child that's in front of us, we're reacting to the experience that was behind us. And it's so important that we get the support if we aren't able to recognize what that is, so that we can, rather than just react, so that we can start to respond to what's actually happening in this relationship. And one of the things you spoke about was, if you are co-parenting with a partner, and then that partner has triggers that they have. But then there's the fantasies. I mean, I've spoken to many parents who parented alone and are parenting alone. I mean, both of us have clients, right? And there's this fantasy that if you have a partner, that it would be so much better. And sometimes it's actually can be more, and again, I don't want to compare and say, well, it's more or less, or it just, there's different sets of challenges. Because when you are co-parenting with a partner who's also parenting the child, you each have triggers that are coming up, and then you have triggers with each other. And so it's like this exponential situation. And so what it ultimately comes down to is just really remembering that we are all souls that come in for this life lesson that we're going to get, right? And that these experiences that are happening aren't happening to us, but they're happening for us, and that they're happening for our kids, because our kids have life lessons that they're learning. And so if we can approach it, that's where this mindset shift comes in. If we can approach it through that lens, we can appreciate even the things that are difficult or challenging.
Yes, I agree. I think that it is part of the conscious parenting movement on the planet, right? It's like, how can we be more conscious about where we're coming from when we're talking to our children or parenting our children, and be aware that if we're triggered and we're in a bigger reaction, what's called for, that is a big red flag right there. It's like, wait a minute, wow, that reaction I had so much energy to it. There must be something else here. And that it is our responsibility to go back to ourselves and say, okay, what does this feel familiar, and where does it lead back to, and start to become more aware of our triggers. And then once we have more awareness about it, then we go back to our children and we do repair, and we talk to them about our process, and that it wasn't okay to yell at them like that, and here's what my intention is for the future, and here's what I'm learning about this. And you just be authentic with them, because they need to see that you can have a reaction, or you can have what you might consider a mistake or a misunderstanding, but you can come back around and repair it, right? Repair the misunderstanding, and also give them an opportunity to share what went on for them.
Yeah, and how many of us, honestly, as parents, had parents that did that for us, that came back to us to do that repair,
Yeah.
right? REPAIR. to repair damage that they had done from the triggers that happened to them, that were their baggage that they were carrying and that they projected onto us. But we then took it personally, right? And internalized it. And so then they became our stories or our triggers, or where we feel bad about ourselves, or where we carry the guilt and the shame. And so I think that a lot of people don't realize how powerful that is. And so this really is not just about parenting our kids, but it's about parenting our kids, about reparenting, REPAIR, reparenting, right? And reparenting ourselves. And that little person inside of us that really needs to be acknowledged and seen and heard and loved. And then we can really show up as the whole parent that our children really need.
And that's
To,
what we all want, really,
yeah,
right? We want to
yeah,
show up for our kids in that way and teach them, you know, how not, and we don't want to pass down the negative feeling, the negative learning that we had. You know, we want to stop it and teach them something different and demonstrate something different for them.
right. Not just by telling or lecturing, but by actually showing and modeling and doing, because that is a huge way that kids learn, right? They do listen. I mean, I've often said children aren't listening to the lecture, they're watching the show. They're doing both. They are listening. However, the impact of what they're like when they're watching the show and the modeling that we do teaches so much.
Yes, it's ongoing.
It is ongoing. So as we approach the summer, I know kids are going to be getting out of school and are getting out of school at this point. And, we're approaching the summer, at least in the US. And other places of the world, it's actually going into winter. So talk about, depends on where we're going on that vacation. Maybe the next weekly wisdom lesson, we can really explore what it looks like when the routines start to change, and how we can create some structure and routine inside of when there isn't structure or isn't routine, because that also can create a lot of, I think, sometimes stress, and it can actually create some relief. So it's a both, it's a both and oftentimes. So,
Great.
all
Thank you
right.
all for joining us today. We
Thanks for
appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us today, and we hope that you'll join us this Tuesday at 12 noon, this coming Tuesday, which is going to be June the 4th, 2024. We're going to be doing our support group online, and the Zoom link will be in the Raising Enlightened Children Facebook group. And if you want to reach us, you can always email us at info@raisingenlightenedchildren. And if you have any questions, put them in there and we will do a weekly wisdom lesson on it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.